In this video, I'm going to demonstrate how to use the dialog boxes and menuing system in Stata to learn how to program in Stata. I advocate not using these for your work once you understand how Stata works, but as a way of learning how all the commands operate. And that's because what you want to do is write programs so that you have an audit trail of all the decisions you've encompassed in your statistical programming. If you simply fill out dialog boxes and submit them, it's very difficult to replicate your analyses and to have a clear trail and history of everything you've done. Well, let's go ahead and look at some of the menus. I've already loaded the General Social Survey into Stata, and we're ready to analyze a variable called age. I'm going to come up here and click on the Statistics drop-down menu. Now you see all the different statistical analyses you can do. And we're going to take some of the simpler ones in the spirit of just figuring out what our data actually look like. And I'm going to go to Summaries, and we're going to produce some summary statistics. This opens up the Stata Dialog Box. You can see there are multiple tabs, and I'm on the main screen where I can enter my variable name. Stata will know your variable names, and you can start typing them, and you can autocomplete, or you can pick them from a drop-down list. But I know that the variable I'm interested in has the mnemonic age, so I'm just going to type that into that box. For this particular command, that's really all I need to do, and I could go ahead and run this command. Now if you look at the bottom of this dialog box, there are three buttons down there. One's labeled OK, Cancel, and Submit. If I click on Submit, it closes the window and doesn't execute this command. If I click on OK, it will issue the command in the command window and close this dialog box. So if I know I have it exactly the way I want, I can just click on OK. And finally, the button that I like is the Submit button, where it will issue the command into the command window and execute it, but leave the dialog box open. And that way I can go back and forth and start playing with all my options. So let's go ahead and just click on Submit here. I'm going to move this window a little out of the way and click on Submit. Now, several things happened here. Number one, you can see on the far left in my reviewing window that it shows me the command that was just executed, Summarize Age. Also, in the results window, not only do I get the results of the command, I also get a listing of the command just like in the review window. And then finally, in my dialog box, there's three little buttons down here, question mark for help, R to reset my dialog box if I don't like my options and I want to go back to the defaults, I click that, and then there's an option here to copy the command to the clipboard. That's a great thing to know. If I click on that button, and then if I want to save this in a word processor, or I'm just going to paste it right into the command window, so I go to the command window and Control V to paste. There's the command I just issued, and of course Enter will run the command again. Why do I like the dialog boxes for learning? Well, I can go in here now and start playing with all of the options, and they may be difficult to figure out in the help file, but here I can just click on them. For example, let's go ahead and display some additional statistics and see what that does. I see that my command now says Summarize Age, Detail. You remember from the other videos that anything after a comma is an option. So detail is an option to the command Summarize. And it adds additional information, including some of the percentile measures, and it gives us a quick listing of smallest and largest measures, number of observations, and so forth. So we gain a little more information with that details option. Pretty much that's all we have in this particular dialog box because the summary command is so basic. But what happens if we, I'm going to go back to the standard display, add other variables, and I can look here, and let's just pick occupational prestige, sat hobby, GVT melt, and now I will click Submit again. And you can see that my new command, the only difference is now is just added these additional variables. So this is a great way to learn about what's in your data set. Let's look at another dialog box. I'm going to go ahead and cancel this dialog box. I'm going to come back here to Statistics, summaries, tables, and tests. And let's look at frequency tables. And as we drill down here, I can do one-way frequency tables or two-way measures, two-way table with measures of association. Well, let's go ahead and look at a two-way measure of association. I get to specify my row variable and my column variable. So remember, your row variable typically will be your dependent variable, and your column variable will be your independent variable. So let's look at the variable degree, which is the highest earned academic degree by sex or gender. Again, this is the minimal amount of information I need to enter, and I'll just click submit once I move this table a little out of the way. And there we get our outcome. This has all the GSS cases, 56,000, nearly 57,000, and we may want to limit that. It also hasn't calculated the percentages properly, so that it's difficult to compare across the columns. And so we're going to go ahead and take some additional options, and we're going to also ask for some statistics. For example, I will ask for the Pearson's chi-square statistic, and in my cell contents, I'm going to pick within column relative frequencies. We want to percentage this table on those column totals, 25,071 and 31,825. I'm going to go ahead and suppress the frequencies, so I only see the percentages. And I'm pretty happy with that, so I'm just going to click submit. And there I have a much better table, and you can see that there's really very little difference in male-female educational attainment. It's statistically significant, and that's probably due to the large sample size. But let's go to another tab here. Here's a tab that's kind of important: by, if, or in. If is an important modifier for us, and we can take a subset of data from this larger data set. So for example, I could type in year equals 2012. Takes a little getting used to, but this is actually consistent with other programming languages. When you're testing for equalities, you don't use a single equal sign, you use two equal signs. If you're creating a new variable and you're going to say something like variable 1 is equal to variable 2 times 100, then you use one equal sign. Generating new data, new variables, one equal sign. Testing equalities, two equal signs. And I can click submit here. And now you can see that my chi-square has decreased and the p-value has gotten larger. We still see that there's virtually no difference between educational attainment for men and for women. Let's look at the command, and you can see that I've asked for tabulate degree sex. So we have our row variable, column variable, and it's now added a modifier as part of the command, if year equals 2012. And now we are going to add our options, so we do comma chi2 for chi-square, column to percentage on the columns, and no freq to suppress the frequencies from the cells. So there's a pretty good table that we'd be happy to now put into a word processor and type up for a report. And more importantly, we've gotten this nice command. We've learned how to use several of the options. And if I want to save this, I'll click on this, copy the command to the clipboard, and I could paste this into an editing file like Notepad, although Stata has its own editor, which we haven't looked at yet, and just save this command. It's always nice to produce a graphical representation of data, and we can do that through this menuing system as well. When I first started learning Stata, I was impressed by the comments on the Stata listserv about how easy the graphics were, but it turns out I don't think it's really that easy. I think, like a lot of the software, there's a steep learning curve to doing graphics. So again, I'm going to advocate that when you're confused by the help text, just go right to these drop-down menus, and we'll go ahead and create a histogram, fairly simple chart. And we'll do it through the dialog box as a way of learning how to write the commands that we can then put into a program. So my variable is again going to be age. At a minimum, that's all I need. And I'm going to click submit. First time you run the Stata, submit a graphics program to Stata, it takes a little bit to start up the graphics engine. Well, here's the default distribution. Stata has created a histogram with 47 bins. Starts at age 18 and the width of the bins is 1.51 years. Looks pretty terrible. We can start playing with our different options. For example, what if my data are discrete? What if I want one bar for each age? We have people between the ages of 18 and 89, and so there should be about 71 different columns if I use this discrete option. Not too bad, although it's probably a little too much information. It's kind of, some bumps and bruises in there. And of course, when we look at the 89 and older column, it kind of sticks out because it is 89 and older. I'm going to go ahead and say that these are continuous, but now I'm going to play with the number of bins. If I click this, I can say I could have 10 bins, and Stata automatically figures out how wide those intervals should be. In this case, 7.1 years. Or I could play with this and say, well, let's summarize the data a bit more. And of course, since I've taken from 10 to 5 bins, I've had to double my bin width, and we now have bins that are 14.2 years wide, or intervals that are 14.2 years wide. I could come back and look at this a little bit differently and say, I'd like to specify the number of bins and let Stata figure out the bin width. So I could say, well, I think about 12 bins might look nice. And Stata automatically figures out how wide they should be and how many bins there should be. And maybe I'm going to have 5 bins. And so forth. So that doesn't look too bad, that our bin width is 5 here, and it gives us 15 bins. So I'm going to leave this checked. Now, I notice that on the left side of the graph, on that y-axis, it's showing the density of these bars, and I would prefer to show this as a percentage, so I click on the percent option. And I'm going to now make a lot of changes, but while I'm on this screen, the bar properties, for example, if I click here, I'm going to change the color. Ultimately, I'd like to produce a black and white or grayscale chart. The default colors I don't find very attractive, so I'm going to go ahead and just go down this long list of colors. And you have a lot of control over colors. You can spend a lot of time playing with colors. I'm just going to take a predefined gray, and I'm going to change the outline color to black, and I'll accept that and click submit. So there we are. There's our first step towards a grayscale or black and white kind of graph. So let's go ahead and look at our command. We have Histogram Age, that's the basic command, and after the comma we have our options. We have width 5, so our intervals are 5-year intervals. Percent, display percentages on the y-axis. F color or fill color is gray for the color of the bars. L color or the line color outlining the bars is black. So that's pretty good. We're learning a lot about the different kinds of things we can do here, but we're really going to change this quite a bit. I'm going to use my if expression, just going through these tabs, and I'm going to say, let's just look at year equals 2012. One thing I like to do is when I add another command, it doesn't cost me very much, is I'm just going to run it in case I made an error in how I set up my command. So here I'm limiting this bar graph to, this histogram to 2012 data. Density plots. Well, how close to a normal distribution is this particular variable? It doesn't look very normally distributed to me. But if I click on the Add Normal Density Plot and submit, it superimposes a line over it. Now it's a little faint, so I can go to Line Properties. I'm going to change the color to black, and I'm going to change the width to thick. And let's click Submit and see what that looks like. And there it stands out a lot more. So I like that, and I'll accept it. And again, if you look down in the results window, you can see that this command is getting quite large and very long, but that's okay. It's Stata that has no trouble with these big long commands. Let's skip over to the y-axis. So the y-axis, I can give this a title. The default title is %, and I can live with that. We have major tick marks, and they're labeled as 0, 5, and 10. We could change that or just leave them alone. I could add minor tick marks, but I think I'm okay with this particular axis just the way it is. I have the same options for the x-axis, and here I'm going to make some changes. I'm going to give it the title Age, and I'm going to add minor tick labels, minor ticks, and I'm going to say that I'm going to want 2 minor ticks. Let's see what that looks like. And you can see now that the x-axis title is now just age, and in between the major ticks, the 20, the 40, the 60, it's got a little minor tick halfway between, so it's representing 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, and so forth. And I think that looks pretty good, so I'll accept that. And again, our command is growing. Titles. You can enter titles the way I've done it here with no quotation marks, or you can add quotation marks. For example, I'm going to come down here to Note and say, within quotation marks, source, (2012). Why did I put that in? Why did I put that caption, or sorry, that note into between the quotes? Because I have a comma there, and if I don't, Stata interprets comma 2012. It interprets 2012 as an option. So we're closing in now on a pretty good looking graphic, and one that I like. It's still this kind of odd colored blue, and I want that to be white, and I'll change that in the next tab. But you can see that there's a lot of complexity here, even for notes and titles. For example, if I click on properties, I can change the size, the color, the position, and there's all sorts of sub-options to these commands. And this is a good way to learn about them. Again, if you read the help file, you'll see that there's a lot of complexity here. Overall, here's a little button down here, Regions Properties. There's 2 regions in this graph. There's the inner plot region, which has the bars, and that's currently colored white. And then there's the larger graph region, which surrounds it, and that's colored blue. And I can change those region properties. So here we have the graph region, which I think is fine, and then I'm sorry, the plot region, which I think is fine, and here's the graph region. And I'm going to change the fill color to white, and let's see what that looks like. There's the graph I want. I can also name these graphs, and I do that here, and I'll just call it Age Hist, and replace, so I can run this command multiple times if I want. I like to name my plots so they don't, if you make multiple plots, they just write over each other unless you give them names, and it keeps them distinct. Click Submit, and there we go. There's my final graph. Now we have a very complicated command. So I'm going to go ahead and copy the command to the clipboard just by clicking that button. And I'm going to close these graph windows and the dialog box. And I'm going to open up the Stata program editor. So I come up here to this button, and it says, when I hover over it, it says New Do File Editor, and I'll click on it, right click, and paste. There's my Stata command that produced the graph. If I want to execute this command, I can just click this button up here, which is to execute all the commands in this file. Currently there's only one command, so let's just go ahead and run that. And you can see it recreates that histogram, shows me the command down here in the results window, and if I want to come back and use this program again, I can click on the Save key, which opens up the typical Windows save box, save dialog, and the default is My Documents, and I can just say something like that and save it. So that's how you use the dialog boxes, and that's how you use it to capture these commands and learn about them. I'm going to show you one more trick in this editor window, and one more Stata command. Stata expects a command and all of its options to be displayed on one line. And you can see that this goes off the screen, off the edge of this box. I can go through it like this, and you can see all the different pieces. It's very difficult to read a command and to debug a program. So I can tell Stata, I'm going to create a little space up here, that instead of putting the command on one line, I'm going to have my command go across multiple lines. Well, how does Stata then know where your command begins and ends? Because it expects each command and all of its options on one line. You change what's called the delimiter. So here's a new Stata command, pound delimit. The default delimiter in Stata is a carriage return line feed. And if you want to learn something about the history of computers and typewriters, look up carriage return in Wikipedia and see what you get. I'm going to change the carriage return line feed to a semicolon. I then go to the end of my command and add the semicolon. So Stata treats this as one sentence. As long as it's on one line, Stata believes it's one sentence, one command and all its options. But now Stata will allow me to break it across lines. And then I have to go back to the default, so I'll type in pound delimit carriage return. Now watch what I can do. I'm going to break my command up into little pieces. I'm going to break this right here, and then I'll space out a little bit and just start breaking my command up into, and its options, into little tiny pieces that are easier for me to understand and all fit on one screen. And again, helps me learn a little bit about Stata. There's our complete Stata command. And I'll leave it up to you to figure out what the command and options do, but it's pretty simple once you break it up like this and then have used the dialog box to produce it. Here's our basic command, histogram age. I have an if qualifier, if modifier to take a subset of data. I'm requesting that I have a width of 5 and that I display percentages on the y-axis. And then you can go right down this list and see all of my other options and then sub-options. So I'm only using one sub-option here, and I'll just mention that one. If you look at the name command, I have name is an option to the histogram command, and within that I have a sub-option, which is the replace. So name, open parent, age hist, the name of the graph, comma, replace. Without the replace, I can only run this command once because I can't write over a file that exists. And I will save this file, and when I come back another day to play with this, I've already uncovered an error here. So this is why I like saving these files and using them again. There, I fixed my source, and I'll say that I can come back and use this command as often as I want, and of course I can add other commands to this file. There you go. There's a little bit more about Stata, how to use the dialog boxes, use them in conjunction with the help file, use them to figure out how to issue a command, how the options work, how the sub-options work, create these commands, put them into your programs, save the programs, and that becomes your permanent record or trail of all the work that you've done. As usual, if you have any questions, give me a call, send me an email, and I will do my best to answer them.